Okay, so this week's Parsha is Parshas Eikev. It begins on page 981 in the Art Scroll Stone Chumash, that is Devarim chapter 7, verse 12. And the parsha begins, "This shall be the reward when you hearken to these ordinances and you observe and perform them." And then it gives a list of rewards that will have. Hashem your God will safeguard you for the covenant and the kindness that he swore to your forefathers. He'll love you, bless you, multiply you. He'll bless the fruit of your womb, the fruit of your land, your grain, your wine, your oil, the offspring of your cattle, the flocks of your sheep and goats on the land that he swore to your forefathers to give you. And you will be the most blessed of all the people. There will be no infertile males or infertile females among you, nor among your animals. Hashem will remove from you every illness and all the bad maladies of Egypt that you knew. He will not put them upon you, but will put them upon your foes. You will devour all the people that Hashem your God will deliver to you. Your eyes shall not pity them. You shall not worship their gods, for it is a snare for you. Okay. But it gives all these wonderful blessings that we'll receive, and it says, what's the requirement for that? And as it begins, when you hearken to these ordinances and you observe and perform them. So the commentaries point out, if we go back a page to the end of last week's Parsha, Parshas Veschanan, so the last verse in Parshas Veschanan, on page 979, it says, "You shall observe the commandment and the decrees and the ordinances that I command you today to perform them." So it gives three categories of commandments: commandment, decree, and ordinance. The Hebrew is mitzvah, chukim, and mishpatim. So mitzvah is usually kind of a catch-all term for commandments. Chukim is specifically the decrees. ArtScroll translates the decrees. Those are the ones that we don't understand the reason for. And ordinances, the mishpatim, are generally understood to mean the laws that govern interpersonal relationships. So not necessarily ritual laws, but laws that govern, let's say, commerce, exactly, like commerce. Don't steal, don't kill isn't necessarily commerce, but it's relationships between people. Don't treat other people, don't denigrate other people, don't rip people off. If someone does steal, return the lost object.
Runs over something or whatever.
Yeah, that you're responsible to pay back. If you damage anything, if your property damages anything, those are mishpatim. Those are ordinances. This parsha begins, after having categorizing them in three groups, this parsha begins, "This shall be the reward when you hearken to these ordinances." It says strictly ordinances, which are, as we said, the laws governing interpersonal relationships. So the Malbim explains that if you look at the blessings that we'll have as a result, these are all material blessings. It says that God will safeguard for you the covenant, the kindness that he swore to your forefathers. That's giving us the land, as Hashem swore to our forefathers, which we have already, but he'll safeguard that covenant for us. In what way? That he will love you, bless you, multiply you. You will bless the fruit of your womb, the fruit of your land, your grain, your wine, your oil. Basically, we'll have material blessings. So the Malbim explains that in general, every mitzvah, the main reward of the mitzvahs are in the world to come. That the reward for that, let's say a person makes a bracha, let's say as an example, which comes from this week's parsha, that they make a blessing over their food, or they put on their tefillin, they keep Shabbos, something, we do a mitzvah. So the main reward is kept for us in the world to come. And there's rewards in this world too, but with these mishpatim, with these ordinances, the laws governing interpersonal relationships, just the natural state of keeping these rules makes the world a better place. If we're kind to others, and the Mishnah and Peah, actually, which we say every morning after we say the blessings on the Torah, we say these are the things that there's a reward in this world, but the primary reward is in the world to come. And it lists honoring your father and mother, visiting the sick, bringing in guests and taking care of guests, which are things amongst people, and that brings friendship, that brings with civilization, really. But not only that, he says that when we do it, not because it's just necessary for civilization, you have to have a set of laws governing how people relate to each other, else you can't have a civilization. And if we do it not just because it just makes sense to have a set of laws, but because this is the mitzvah of Hashem, as it says here, if you hearken these observances and you observe and perform them, hearken them means you're doing them because you're listening to Hashem. You do it as listening to God. You see something you want, you don't take it, not just because if you take it and people start ignoring the laws against stealing, so it's just not tenable to live amongst people. But we keep it because it's a mitzvah. I want it, but God commanded me to respect other people's property and not to take something that belongs to someone else. So if we follow the laws, so then as a natural result of that, we have these blessings that Hashem sends us blessings directly as a result of keeping these mitzvahs. And Rashi actually translates the word Eikev, which is the name of the Parsha. Art Scroll kind of skips over it. It doesn't really translate it. It says, "This shall be the reward when you hearken." And I guess the Art Scroll is translating it as when. But the Malbim understands it, and I think the Ramban as well, that it means as a result, meaning the Malbim is saying that it's a natural result of keeping the mitzvahs. These mitzvahs, automatically we have this blessing. It's not less a reward than it's the natural, it's cause and effect. But Rashi explains that it means that Eikev means Eikev could also mean heel, like the heel of the foot. Like Yaakov, exactly. That's the same root, the same three letters, Ayin Kuf Beis, is the name Yaakov that Esav was grabbing onto Yaakov's heel. Yaakov was grabbing onto Esav's heel as he was leaving the womb. So that's the word Eikev here, and it means the heel. And Rashi says it means the minor mitzvahs that a person tends to trample on with their heel, meaning that when there's a big mitzvah to do. So that's something that people get excited about, like, oh wow, look at this big mitzvah that I have to do. It's a bar mitzvah or something along those lines, a bar mitzvah, a wedding. People make a big event and it's very exciting and people participate in it with excitement, but something that feels very minor and doesn't really feel like a big religious experience. So that sometimes falls by the wayside and tends to get trampled on. And the Torah is telling us that that's where blessings come from. And the Malbim says that might be where mishpatim are. That's these ordinances that don't necessarily feel like a religious experience, just doing business, our day-to-day life, doing business honestly, and just treating people properly, which doesn't feel like a religious experience, and those might be the mitzvahs that tend to fall by the wayside, that we tend to trample on, but that's where blessing in this world comes from. Okay, and it says here in verse 15, in verse 16, you will devour all the people that Hashem your God will deliver to you. Your eyes shall not pity them. You shall not worship their gods, for it is a snare for you. And the commentaries understand that this is also cause and effect. You shall not pity them. You shall not worship their gods, meaning that what's the way to not worship their gods is not pity them, because if we do take pity on them and allow them to remain living side by side with us, so that will have an influence on us and we will end up serving their deities, which is what ended up happening, that when the Jews conquered the land of Israel, or the land of Canaan at the time, they left some Canaanites still living there, and eventually we fell into the trap of serving these Canaanite deities. And in verse 17, perhaps you will say in your heart, these nations are more numerous than I. How will I be able to drive them out? Do not fear them. You shall remember what Hashem your God did to Pharaoh and to all of Egypt, the great tests that your eyes saw, the signs, the wonders, the strong hand and the outstretched arm, which Hashem your God took you out. So shall Hashem your God do to these people before whom you fear. And the Malbim explains the strong hand and the outstretched arm. That's again, we say that in the Haggadah about our deliverance from Egypt, and it's comparing the future conquest of the land of Canaan to our deliverance from Egypt. That the strong hand refers to Hashem acting outside of the laws of nature that we found in Egypt. That the water turned to blood, and there was hail coming down along with fire, and there was just things that went beyond the laws of nature when Hashem took us out of Egypt. The sea split, and we walked through the sea on dry land. And Hashem was telling us that would happen in our conquest of the land of Canaan as well. And in the land of Canaan, there were great miracles. The Jordan River dried up, so we were able to cross. And they blew the shofars, and the walls of Jericho fell down. Walls came tumbling down. That's how it goes. Uh, and there was also these stones falling from heaven, and at one point the sun stood still. The sun stopped moving, or the earth stopped spinning, that the sun stayed in the sky, so night didn't come, and they were able to continue their conquest. So that's the strong hand. And the outstretched arm, the Malbim explains, means that when Hashem acts and in a way that we don't deserve. And that's when perhaps in Egypt, it says when we went into the sea, the angel of the sea, the spiritual embodiment of the sea, wanted to drown the Jewish people. It said, why do the Egyptians deserve to be destroyed and the Jews deserve to be saved? They both worshiped idols. That we had fallen into the worship of the Egyptian pagan deities, and we didn't deserve to be saved, but Hashem saved us in spite of that. And that happened also in the conquest of the land, this Zorah Netuya, this outstretched arm, where Hashem stretches out our arm to us, where we aren't able to meet him, that because we don't deserve the salvation that we're given. Yes. Yes, exactly. And that's the analogy, is saying the same way that happened in Egypt, don't look at yourself and say, we don't deserve to conquer Egypt, so we won't be able to do it. You didn't deserve to be taken out of Egypt either. That's the outstretched arm. He calls it, and it's a common Kabbalistic term of Isarusa Dil'ela, which is Aramaic for like a initiated from above. Meaning it's not that we did anything down here in the world below that caused us to deserve it, but it's coming directly from above without any initiation below, without being deserved from below. And that's the outstretched arm of Hashem. Okay, and then in verse 22, Hashem your God will thrust these nations from before you little by little. You will not be able to annihilate them quickly, lest the beasts of the field increase against you. Hashem your God will deliver them before you, and you will confound them with great confusion until their destruction. He will deliver their kings on page 983 into your hand, and you shall cause their name to perish from under the heaven. No man will stand up against you until you have destroyed them. So again, here the Malbim comments, this is fascinating, is that it says that Hashem will thrust this nation from you little by little. You'll not be able to annihilate them quickly. So the commentaries say that this is teaching us that there's no such thing as unintended consequences in the heavenly judgment. That whenever someone is punished, there's always the collateral damage. Let's say someone is put in prison. So their children now are left without a father. The wife is left without a husband, assuming it's a man who's married with children. The parents are suffering from the shame of what their son did and that their son is being punished this way. And there's always unintended consequences. There's collateral damage. But in heavenly justice, that's not the case, and everything is taken into account. And I heard from Rabbi in the name of Rabbi Kollel, that he says this is what it means when it says that all of humanity is judged in one glance. That this means that when a judgment is made, everything is taken into account. The effects of whatever happens is taken into account, and nothing is collateral damage. It's all a decision that this should happen, and it wouldn't happen if it wasn't supposed to happen. Okay, so the Torah is telling us, so we won't be able to conquer the land of Canaan all at once, because if we did, then there you have, until we were able to settle it, you have these empty areas, and the wilderness will take over. So we'll conquer little by little. But the Malbim says, but then the Torah goes on to say, in verse 23, Hashem your God will deliver them before you, will confound them with great confusion until their destruction. That implies, this confound them with great destruction, implies that there'll be something that happens all at once, this big destruction, big confusion. And he explains that if you actually look at how the conquest of the land happened in the book of Yeshua, in the book of Joshua, so there were big battles in the beginning, towards the beginning of the conquest of the land, where many kings joined together to try to drive the Israelites out. And they had great miraculous victories. and then there were just small battles to fight afterwards. And he says this that both of these things were necessary because if they would fight little by little, that means they're in just a constant state of war and a constant state of difficult war. It's just like a battle of attrition that, okay, wake up, okay, and the next attack, and wake up the next attack, the next day, okay, now there's another attack. It's very difficult to live that way. And it takes a toll. So instead, Hashem arranged events to happen this way that at first there was this big battle, this great confusion where they defeated many kings at once. And so the main victory already took place. And then afterwards, after that great victory, so there were smaller battles along the way, but it wasn't this constant fighting, this constant big battles being dealt with. So that way they took care of the main body of the resistance, and then little by little they conquered the rest of the land, so the wilderness didn't take over. Okay. So in verse 25, so the carved image of their God, you shall burn in fire, you shall not covet or take for yourself the silver or gold that is on them, lest you be ensnared by it, for it is an abomination of Hashem your God. And you shall not bring an abomination into your home and become banned like it. You shall surely loathe it, and you shall surely abominate it, for it is banned. And so there's a mitzvah, even if the plan isn't to worship it, not to bring any idolatry, any abomination, any idolatry into our home. So this would include other things that, things that might be very valuable that are worshipped by groups. There could be, let's say, Hindu or any religion that worships multiple deities. That's avodah zarah. That's idolatry to us, or that's idolatry in general. And there's a prohibition against even bringing one of those images into our house, into our homes. And this includes anything that's abominable to Hashem should not be in our home. Okay, and another thing here, it says that you shall surely loathe it. And our sages say that in general, we try not to denigrate things. We try not to make fun of things. But when it comes to idolatry, that's the exception, that it says you're supposed to denigrate it. You're supposed to loathe it. You shall abominate it. And right now, I think they're still learning avodah zarah and daf yomi, which you're learning it with Rabbi Slatus as well on Shabbos, right, in the Talmud class. And there, I think before Rabbi Slatus is teaching, but our sages gave names to the idolatry, and they were living amongst the Romans. And so these Roman deities were really a reality. People around them were worshiping Jupiter, Saturn, all these Roman deities, and they called them names. Like there's a Marcellus that comes up a lot in the Talmud. That's the name the Gemara gives for Mercury. I don't remember exactly what it is, but I remember the Talmud saying that was said as an insult, because the people around them worshiped Mercury, and they had to like avoid there was like a shrine to Mercury at like every crossroad, and there's this whole, because I think that's the Mercury was like the Roman deity of the crossroad or something along those lines. So they would then there would be a rock arrangement. There was a shrine to Mercury, and there's laws throughout the avodah zarah about what you would do about that, how you treat that. Okay, so moving on, chapter 8, page 983. The entire commandment that I command you today you shall observe to perform, so that you may live and increase and come to possess the land that Hashem swore to your forefathers. That the entire Torah is a requirement so you could possess the land that Hashem swore to your forefathers. And the Mashech Chochmah says that when it comes to, let's say, our life and things along those lines, so there's somewhat of an excuse when it comes to the Torah, that there was some level of coercion by the accepting of the Torah, and there might be, and so we're not necessarily going to be destroyed by not keeping the Torah. But the land of Israel was given to us as a place, as the conditional on our keeping the Torah. So when we don't keep the Torah, we lose possession of the land, and our possession is weakened when we don't keep the Torah, to the point that there were times in our history where we were completely expelled from the land. Okay, in verse 2. You shall remember the entire road on which Hashem your God led you these 40 years in the wilderness, so as to afflict you, to test you, to know what is in your heart, whether you would observe his commandment or not. And the Malbim explains this idea to afflict you and to test you is to, first of all, to put us down, kind of break us down physically in order that we should grow spiritually, that if we're too connected to our physical reality, we lose track of the spiritual side of ourselves if we're too busy eating, drinking, being satisfied. So you lose the spiritual element, and sometimes you could only get in touch with the spiritual when you move away from the physical, and that we were broken down physically in order to get in touch with our spiritual being. And also, we had these miracles and wonders in the desert, that we had the man fall, our food fell from heaven, and we had the water followed us wherever we went. And in order that we should grow, and we should live as spirit, basically live completely spiritually, completely detached to the physical. And why did Hashem do this? In verse 3, in order to know that not he fed you the manna that you did not know, nor did your forefather know, in order to make you know that not by bread alone does man live, rather by everything that emanates from the mouth of God does man live. There's nothing inherent in bread that makes us that keeps us that gives us satisfaction and gives us nutrition. It's because God commanded that bread should have those properties. That's why it has those properties. And God commands that we should be satiated without that, we'll be satiated without that. And that was the man that we lived on for 40 years in the desert.
Well, maybe that explains how.
Maybe. Maurice challah is delicious and satiating too.
I have two nieces in Atlanta that we have to get this cinnamon challah therapy.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
It's on the list.
yeah.
List. I mean, last year they fought over it, and they wouldn't like my niece Sarah would not serve it to us because she might keep it for herself.
It's so sweet.
We brought this up here for everybody.
Oh yeah.
Murray's going to be making.
Yeah, so he's going to be busy. He's going to be busy. Yeah. Yeah, and even the plain rolls might be better than anywhere that I've ever had. Okay, so in verse 5, you should know in your heart that is just as a father will chastise his son, so Hashem your God chastises you. And it continues, you shall observe the commandments of Hashem your God to go in his ways and fear him, for Hashem your God is bringing you to a good land, a land with streams of water, of springs, underground water, growing forth from valley and mountain, a land of wheat, barley, grape, fig, and pomegranate, a land of oil, olives, and date honey, a land where you eat bread without poverty, you will lack nothing there, a land whose stones are iron, and from whose mountains you will mine copper. Page 985, you'll eat, you will be satisfied, and bless Hashem your God for the good land that he gave you. And here, this is kind of a mission statement of why we went through everything we went through in Egypt and in the desert was that where is it? And again in verse 5, you should know in your heart that just as the father will chastise his son, so Hashem your God chastises you. And Hashem is bringing you into this good land that has anything you could ever want is there. It's like it's a complete land where you don't need anything from the outside. And everything that Hashem did was in order that we should be able to survive in the plenty and to survive in prosperity, because there's a big danger in prosperity that if a parent spoils a child and never just gives them whatever they want, and they never are disciplined and never ever meet anything that ever want, never have a want that's not satisfied, so they won't be able to survive. They won't be able to survive plenty. They won't be able to survive prosperity. And what was that incident they had where there was a kid who, I think a drunk driver or drug driver who killed some people, and the excuse to the judge was that he never ever knew anything but prosperity, and he just didn't have any discipline. I mean, I think it was someone else, but similar idea. Yeah. Yeah. Similar idea is that children need people need discipline. And if a person never learns to have self-discipline and to want something and not get it, and to do something wrong, and to be disciplined for that. So they need praise too, just to be clear. But if a person is never told that they did something wrong, so they won't know how to deal with it, and and in adulthood, they could get very messed up. And because Hashem's bringing us to this wonderful place, we need to first learn self-discipline and learn discipline, period, and to learn how to fight through adversity and to know what it means to be hungry, to want, and not have. Then we could go to this beautiful land. And it concludes there in verse 10 on page 985. You'll eat, you'll be satisfied, and bless Hashem your God for the good land that he gave you. And this is the source that we bench after we eat. When we eat bread, we're satisfied, and we bless Hashem our God for the good land that he gave us, which is actually, this verse is quoted in the benching. Okay, and then the Torah says of two dangers really that could come out of the prosperity that we'll have in the land. First of all, in verse 11 on page 985, take care lest you forget Hashem your God by not observing his commandments, his ordinances, and his decrees, which I command you today, lest you eat and be satisfied, and you build good houses and settle. Again, we have this prosperity, and your cattle and sheep and goats increase, and you increase silver and gold for yourself, and everything you will have will increase. And your heart will become haughty, and you'll forget Hashem your God, who took you out of the land of Egypt from the house of slavery, who leads you through the great and awesome wilderness of snake, fiery serpent, scorpion, etc., who fed you the manna in the wilderness. And in verse 17, and you may say in your heart, my strength and the might of my hand made me all of this wealth. So this is the first danger of prosperity, that Hashem gave us everything we have, and we have some success, and we say, wow, look at what I did. I'm good at this. And look how I made myself so successful. And then, so in verse 18, then you shall remember Hashem your God, that it was he who gave you strength to make wealth in order to establish his covenant that he swore to your forefathers as this day. It shall be that if you forget Hashem your God and go after the gods of others and worship them and prostrate yourself to them, and here it's thinking that it's not from Hashem, it's luck or whatever, it's these constellations and these other powers. I testify against you today that you will surely perish like the nations Hashem causes to perish before you. So you will perish because you will not have hearkened to the voice of Hashem your God. So that's the first danger of prosperity, is attributing it all to ourselves and our own efforts and not recognizing that it comes from Hashem. And then it just talks about how Hashem will drive out the nations in front of us. And in verse 4, chapter 9, verse 4, still on page 985, do not say in your heart when Hashem pushes them away from before you, saying, because of my righteousness did Hashem bring me to possess this land, and because of the wickedness of these nations did Hashem drive them away from before you. And this is the second danger of prosperity. The first danger is forgetting God's involvement and saying, I did a great job, and forgetting that it comes from Hashem. The second danger is remembering it comes from Hashem and saying, if God gave me this, I must be doing pretty good. And I must be pretty righteous. That there's this idea out there, they call it the prosperity doctrine or something along those lines, where like they'll worship someone successful and give someone successful all their money, because if he's successful, he has God's grace. So like he must be in God's favor. And here Hashem's saying, don't look at yourself and say, look at this blessing God gave me. I'm doing pretty good. God, I don't have anything to worry about with me and God. So in verse 5, it says, not because of your righteousness and the uprightness of your heart are you coming to possess their land, but because of the wickedness of these nations does Hashem your God drive them away from before you. First of all, they're driven out because they deserve it. And in order to establish the word that Hashem swore to your forefathers, to Avram, to Yitzchak, and to Yaakov, remember where you come from. And Hashem swore to our patriarchs, to Avram, to Yitzchak, and Yaakov, that he's going to give this land to them and to their descendants, and that's why we have this land. And you should know that not because of your righteousness does Hashem your God give you this good land to possess it, for you are a stiff-necked people. And then it goes through, don't think you deserve it. Look back at your history. Remember, do not forget that you provoked Hashem your God in the wilderness from the day you left the land of Egypt to your arrival in this place. Don't think you deserve it. In Chorev you provoked Hashem, and I ascended to the mountain to receive the tablets of stone, and we worshiped there was a group that worshiped the golden calf, and Moshe pleaded for us or pled for us, and Hashem granted us forgiveness. And on page 989, and in Tavera, in Masa, Kivros Ataiva, other places you were provoked Hashem, and when Hashem sent you from Kadesh Barnea, saying, go and possess the land that I gave you, you rebelled against the word of Hashem your God, you did not believe him. That was the incident of the spies. You have been rebels against Hashem from this day, from the day that I knew you. Page 989, I threw myself down before Hashem for the 40 days and 40 nights. I threw myself down. Hashem intended to destroy you, and he prayed for us at the sin of the golden calf. So he's saying, don't think that you deserve that's coming to you because you deserve it. Look at everything that you've done. Okay, so in chapter 10, at that time, on page 989, at that time Hashem said to me, carve for yourself 2 stone tablets like the first ones, ascend to me to the mountain and make a wooden ark for yourself. What this wooden ark is describing is very unclear. So Rashi says that besides the Ark of the Covenant that was built for the Mishkan, he says there was a second wooden ark that they would use when they would they were taken to battle. And when they would take, I guess, the luchas, the tablets into battle, they would take it in this wooden ark, that then they would leave the main ark in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle, it would seem. And this is based on the Medrash, Tanchuma. And he says that there was one time that they took the main ark out to battle, and that was when they fought against the Philistines in the days of Eli, and it was actually captured by the Philistines at that time. And eventually they sent it back after they were struck with these diseases. So they sent it back. And that's what this wooden ark that it's referring to is. The Ramban says that that's not the majority opinion. He says that's a minority opinion in the Talmud, but he says the majority opinion he understood is that this is talking about before the building of the tabernacle. So what did they do with when Moshe brought down the tablets? Let's say after the first ones he destroyed, then he went up again, 40 days, 40 nights, brought down the second tablets. So, and what did they do with them until they built the tabernacle? They built the ark and the tabernacle. So that's what this wooden ark was for. In the meantime, until they actually built the main Ark of the Covenant, and once that was built, this one was buried, hidden away. Like we do with any holy thing, is that we bury it. That's the shemus, we bury. But the Ramban he says this is based on the Medrash, but the Ramban also wants to interpret that this is the primary mitzvah of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, that the main purpose of the Mishkan was everything that was within it, but the center of the Mishkan and its main identity was the Ark of the Covenant containing the tablets, which was in the Holy of Holies. And this was the mitzvah that in the future you will build a wooden ark covered in gold on the inside and out, and that will contain the luchas, and this was the main mitzvah of the building of the tabernacle. And so he says he did that, and then it continues in verse 6. The children of Israel journeyed from Beerus Bnei Yakan to Mosera. Their Aaron died, and Elazar ministered in his place. Elazar, his son, replaced him as the Kohen Gadol, and it continues in their journeys. Okay, and in verse 12 on page 991. I'll back up a little bit. The top of 991, verse 8. At that time, Hashem set apart the tribe of Levi to carry the Ark of the Covenant of Hashem, to stand before Hashem, to minister to him, and to bless in his name until this day. At that time means after the incident of the golden calf, when Moshe said, whoever is for Hashem, come to me, the entire tribe of Levi joined him. And they weren't involved at all in the sin of the golden calf. That's when Levi was raised up to be the ones to serve Hashem. And it says, how did they serve Hashem? Again in verse 8, to stand before Hashem, to minister to him, and to bless in his name until this day. To bless in his name, Rashi says, is referring to the Kohanim, to doing Birkas Kohanim, the blessing of the Kohanim, Yevarechecha Hashem Yishmerecha, which is interesting that's describing that to Levi. And the commentaries say that this was that this is really, I think Shimon Schwab says that this is really a Levi mitzvah, the blessing of the Kohanim, and the Kohanim are like a subcategory of Levi because they're descendants of Aaron, who's from the tribe of Levi. So like the Kohanim are kind of like a special category within the tribe of Levi, and they're like the representatives of Levi who do Birkas Kohanim, but it's really something that's is relevant or connected to the whole tribe of Levi, and that's why the Leviim wash the hands of the Kohanim before they duchen, before they give this bracha, is because in order to have a part of the mitzvah, because the Kohanim are doing it as members of Levi. Only the Kohanim could do it, but they're doing it as the special Leviim, not as Kohanim per se.
Involved in the sin of the golden calf.
Yes, that's a very good question.
So,
but
is he elevated do you see what I mean?
Yeah. So his involvement was not at all in the worship of it, and it wasn't even in the asking for it. He was trying to delay them. He felt, which he saw, that his nephew, Chur was his nephew, tried to stop them, and he was stoned to death. And so Aaron felt that if he tries to stop them, nothing will happen. He tried to delay. And he tried to go along, just slow the process down, and it didn't work. And he thought that Moshe will come very soon, and the whole thing will stop. But it went faster than he expected. His delaying didn't work for whatever reason. So he was involved to a point, but not at all with any intention to be involved.
Could the argument be made that punishment to him for that was the death of his two sons? Or no?
I don't want to go there. I think I have seen something along those lines, but once again, like we said, that the collateral damage is never collateral damage with heavenly judgment. So the sons' death was as a result of their own actions. Was that connected to Aaron's sin? Maybe.
Okay.
But I'm not ready to say that.
Okay.
But
yeah.
Involvement in the golden calf was simply throwing the gold into the fire, and Hashem produced the
right.
calf.
Well, yeah, right. But he did do what he did, and he was right. But once again, that is something, right?
What he did,
right. So, like I said, it's unclear how much responsibility he has in that case, but I'll leave it at that. There might be more to say on that. Okay, where are we? Oh, so now in verse 12, page 991, verse 12. Now, O Israel, what does Hashem your God ask of you? Only to fear Hashem your God, to go in all his ways, and to love him, and to serve Hashem your God with all your heart, with all your soul, to observe the commandments of Hashem and his decrees, which I command you today for your benefit. So the commentaries ask here, it says, what does Hashem your God ask of you? Only to fear Hashem your God, to go in all his ways, etc. So I think our sages asked, is that a minor thing? Like that's all he asks of you is to serve Hashem your God, as if like that's a small thing. That's the only thing, that's not much. So I think the Ramban understands it to mean, is it the Ramban? Yeah, so I think the Ramban says that's coming up. Is that what is he asking of you is really going on that last part of verse 13, which is for your benefit. Meaning that all Hashem is asking you is to fear him because it's to your benefit. And meaning Hashem just wants the best for you, and this is the best for you. So it's not like Hashem's asking us to torture ourselves because he enjoys pain or whatever. Is Hashem wants us to do this, to keep the mitzvahs because that'll be good for us. It's like a parent telling a kid to don't eat that unhealthy junk, eat these fruits and vegetables because it'll be good for you. The parent's not depriving the child because it wants the child to suffer. The parent wants the child to be healthy, and this is a necessary part of being healthy. Okay. And it continues, behold, Hashem your God are the heaven and highest earth, heaven, the earth, and everything that is in it. Only your forefathers did Hashem cherish to love them. And he chose their offspring after them, you from among all the people as this day. You shall cut away the barrier of your heart and no longer stiffen your neck. This almost invokes the words used here. You shall cut away the barrier of your heart. The Hebrew is arlas levavchem, which is the foreskin of your heart, which is kind of invoking almost like a circumcision. Just instead of a circumcision of that area, it's a circumcision of the heart. And no longer stiffen your neck, meaning take away all barriers stopping yourself from receiving the word of Hashem. For Hashem, your God, He is the God of the powers, the Lord of the lords, the great, mighty, and awesome God who does not show favor, who does not accept a bride. He carries out the judgment of orphan and widow and loves the proselyte to give him bread and the garment. And you shall love the proselyte, for you were strangers in the land of Egypt, that Hashem loves those who are vulnerable. And you should too. You should take care of those who might be vulnerable, might not have someone of their own. Hashem your God, you shall fear him, you shall serve, to him you shall cleave, and it is an awesome thing that your eyes saw. With 70 souls did your ancestors descend to Egypt, and now Hashem your God has made you like the stars of the heaven for abundance. So it was almost like a birth, that we came into Egypt with just 70 people, and it was almost like we gestated there and then left, like we were born as 600,000 men, along with all the women and children. Okay, and then it continues, still on page 993, chapter 11. You shall love Hashem your God, you shall safeguard his charge, his decree, his ordinances, his commandments all the days. And Moshe is telling them, listen to who I'm talking to. You shall note today that it is not your children who did not know, who did not see the chastisement of Hashem your God, his greatness, his strong, and his outstretched arm, etc. Moshe was saying he's talking to these people who experienced 40 years in the desert, or experienced some of the time in the desert. They saw the manna. Some of them were young when they left Egypt. They would have been under 20 when at the time of the sin of the spies, other than the Levim and the women. But they might have experienced leaving Egypt and saw the signs that happened there. He saw what happened to Dasan and Aviram, etc. So he's saying, you who saw this should definitely be listening to me and follow this musar, this rebuke. And why? In order to, and as it continues at the bottom, in verse 8, page 993, so that you observe the entire commandment that I command you today, so that you'll be strong, you will come and possess the land to which you are crossing the Jordan, to possess it, and that you will prolong your days in the land that Hashem your God swore to your forefathers to give them and to their offspring, a land flowing with milk and honey. For the land to which you come to possess it is not like the land of Egypt, that you left, where you would plant your seed and water it on foot like a vegetable garden, where the water in Egypt came from the Nile. The Nile would overflow, and that's where the water came from. It doesn't really rain there. So they would have to carry the water from the Nile to wherever they're planting. But the land to which you cross over to possess it is the land of hills and valleys. From the rain of the heavens you'll drink water, that the land of Israel survives on rainwater. A land that Hashem your God seeks out, the eye of Hashem your God is always on it from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. Whereas in Egypt, the Nile River overflows and you have water and you carry it to wherever you're going. Here, it's watered by rain. That means that if the rain doesn't come, there's a drought and you starve. So the eye of Hashem is always on it, and we always have to turn to Hashem and beg and pray to Hashem for rain. So we have that relationship with Hashem in the land of Israel that we didn't have previously. And then the Parsha has the second paragraph of Shema, that it will be that when you hearken to my command, that I command you to love Hashem your God and to serve him with all your heart, with all your soul. Then I shall provide rain for your land in its proper time, the early, the late rains that you may gather in your grain, your wine, and your oil. I shall provide grass for your fields, for your cattle. You'll eat, you'll be satisfied. And so this is kind of concluding the Parsha the way it began. Beware for yourself, lest your heart be seduced and you turn astray and serve the gods of others. So we'll be rewarded if we keep the Torah, we'll be punished if we don't keep the Torah. And prostrate yourselves to the gods of others, and the wrath of Hashem will blaze against you, will restrain the heavens, so there will be no rain, and the ground will not yield its produce. You'll be swiftly banished from the goodly land that Hashem gives you. You shall place these words of mine upon your heart and upon your soul. It shall bind you. You shall bind them for a sign upon your arm, and let them be an ornament between your eyes. You shall teach them to your children, to discuss them while you sit in your home, while you walk in the way, when you retire, when you arise. You shall write them on the doorpost of your house and upon your gates, in order to prolong your days and the days of your children upon the land that Hashem has sworn to your forefathers to give them, like the days of the heaven upon the earth. So this is the second paragraph of the Shema. Our sages call it receiving the yoke of reward and punishment, meaning that when we say Shema, the first paragraph of Shema especially, we're accepting Hashem as a God, the one God. Here we're accepting that there's reward and punishment. There are consequences for keeping the Torah and not keeping the Torah. And then the Parsha concludes, for if you observe this commandment that I command you to perform, to love Hashem your God, to walk in his ways, to cleave to him, Hashem will drive out all these nations from before you, etc. And in verse 24, every place where the sole of your foot will tread will be yours, from the wilderness and the Lebanon, from the river, the Euphrates River, until the western sea shall be your boundary. If we would keep the Torah, the land of Israel would extend much further than it does. Israel extends at this point. No man should stand up against you. Hashem your God will set your terror and fear on the entire face of the earth, while you will tread as he spoke to you. And just briefly, just a word about the Haftarah on page 1197. So this is the second of the 7 Haftarahs of consolation. The first one was last week, which is called Shabbos Nachamu. It's comfort my people. This one begins, so there are 7 from the book of Yeshaya, the book of Isaiah, speaking about comfort to the Jewish people. And it begins, and Zion said, Hashem has forsaken me. My Lord has withdrawn from feeling compassion for the child of her womb. That was Hashem saying through Yeshaya that that's what the Jewish people think, that Hashem abandoned us. And Hashem responds, can a woman forget her nursling, withdraw from feelings of compassion for a child of her womb? Do you think that a mother who just gave birth and who's nursing a child, does she forget about that child? Does she abandon that child? Even were these to forget, yet I would not forget you. Even that the relationship between the Jewish people and Hashem goes beyond a mother and her baby. Okay. Shkoyach, everybody have a great Shabbos.